Good morning, gardeners. This is Anna. I am in the Unity Church-Unitarian Children's Garden, and things are really popping over here. And it's full of food that we will be bringing to food shelves, and I hope you come to the garden and help us harvest. That would be great. Today, I am thinking about eggs, and in particular, eggs that have a little chick inside of it that will grow up to be a chicken. And if you think about that little chick inside that egg, it starts off as just a tiny little speck on the yolk, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And as its body grows, it absorbs the yolk, and it absorbs the albumin, the egg white that's inside there. Everything it needs is inside that egg. It's a perfect home for the first 21 days of that chick's life. And then the day comes when it is completely crowded and it can't move an inch, and the food is almost used up. It's just got a little bit of yolk left on its belly, and it's time to hatch. I want you to think what that chick experiences. It can hear its mother, it can hear its siblings and the eggs adjacent to it cheeping away inside their eggs. And it must be exciting, and it must also be terrifying to think of leaving this perfect home for something that you don't know. With that in mind, let's light the chalice. We're going to light this for courage, for chickens, and for gardens. And as we light our chalice, we know that we light it as a symbol of our faith, the warmth of love, and the light of truth. And if you'll sing with me, rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, sing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. There's a cardinal to my right singing, and it's a little distracting, and he's right on top of the rhubarb. And he was just singing full-throated. Just lovely. That's what I love about being out here, as long as we're talking about birds. So we'll do our joys and sorrows, and one of my sorrows is that a very dear friend died recently, and his memorial service is this weekend. The choir got together online, and we sang all of his favorite hymns from the hymnal, and it just reminds me of how important community is, how important song and music and art are, and we are so blessed here to have that at our church. And for that, I'm grateful. Give you a second to do this at home. Think about what's going on in your life. And if you don't want to say it out loud, you can always keep it in the silence of your heart. To tell us more about chickens, Michelle, our videographer, is actually going to take us to one of our congregants' gardens, another garden, not this garden. Sylvia Hageman is one of our teen students, and she's been raising chickens in her yard for quite a number of years, and she's going to tell you more about that. So let's go to Sylvia.
I'm Sylvia. I usually go to the garden every Sunday when there isn't crazy stuff going on. And some of you who have previously been to the garden may remember that me and my dad will bring in one of our chickens. So we have 6 chickens. The one I'm currently holding right now is named Robin, and she's a real sweetie pie. 3 of our chickens are new this year, including Robin and these 2 right here, Maillard and Roberta. They haven't started laying eggs yet because they're still too young. We got them when they were really like little fluffy chicks, like just barely out of the egg, and that was this spring, and they've grown this much since. As you can kind of see here, they're in a separate enclosure, and that's to keep them separated from the other chickens while they're until they're fully grown, because chickens can be a bit brutal.
Okay.
We always used to bring in Anna, but she passed away of raccoon attack the night before we were going to bring her into the garden.
I remember that.
Midnight got sick and died. And so Elsa's the only one of the original 3 left. We got 2 more before Midnight died, and we got them when they were older, so they're not as well socialized and they're not very nice. And by not very nice, I mean mostly they're a lot more skittish. Like, these guys are skittish. Those guys are a lot more skittish.
Yeah.
And their names are Shadowfax and May. And then these are our 3 newbies that we got this spring, and they're so cute and I love them. And they don't all look the same when they're chicks either. They're not like all like Robin. When she was like a chick, she was like a little ball of fluff, and she was exactly the same color, just a ball of fluff. So chickens will eat just about anything. So aside from their regular food, we'll also feed them chicken scraps, and occasionally we'll let them out and they'll eat some weeds and some pests. But they'll eat things like old Brussels sprouts, for instance. So we often feed them that. But today we have a special treat for them: Japanese beetles. Hello. Might take them a second to realize what exactly they are. Cute.
Might be afraid of it because it's new.
So much for cooperation, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, see how Elsa does with those. She's usually pretty.
Yep.
She's good with those.
So, yeah, we're feeding them to Elsa instead because the younger ones don't really get it. Let's
Now
see
they
if
do.
they've learned from example, maybe?
Here, so
Yep.
they also like
Okay.
this. You can give that to her.
And you know what? Let's just leave these for Elsa. So we're gonna give the Japanese beetles to Elsa because the young ones don't seem to know what to do with them exactly. And instead, we're gonna give the younger chickens some goosefoot. Right? Yes. So we're gonna give the younger ones some goosefoot. And we're gonna just put this in here because they know that's yummy. They haven't had any experiences with Japanese beetles yet, so. Oh, looks like Elsa's finished off the Japanese beetles. We'll feed the chickens things like goosefoot, or like kitchen scraps. You can see some old corn cobs, things like that. They can like they'll mainly eat this, and this is what they live off of, but you know, it's nice to give them a little treat, and it's a good way to get rid of kitchen scraps. Reasons that it's nice to have backyard chickens. Number one, they lay eggs, at least in the summer. They stop laying in the winter. But the difference between eggs from backyard chickens and eggs you get at the store is that the eggs that you get at the store, they've been washed. And fresh laid chicken eggs have a protective coating on them, so they can just sit on the counter and they don't need to be refrigerated. But since store-bought chicken eggs have been washed, you need to put them in the refrigerator. So we just leave all the eggs we get from the chickens in a bowl on the counter. And we have a fairly good supply of eggs in the summer, which is good because we eat a lot of eggs. Another really great reason to have chickens is that their poop is a good form of compost. We have our compost pile back here, and it has all the typical things one would put in a compost pile, like you know, some kitchen scraps, some weeds, random like yard materials, but it also has chicken poop from when we've cleaned out the chicken coop, and that helps make fertilizer for our garden. And if you let them free range, they'll also like if you let them out into the garden, they'll also eat some pests, and they'll eat some of the weeds, not all of them. They'll eat goosefoot, but yeah, mainly, so they will eat some of the pests that you can find in the garden. But the two main benefits really are the eggs and the compost. Make sure you have a coop, because it's like the chicken's house. They need a place to stay, they need a place to sleep. If you live in a place like Minnesota where it gets very cold in the winter, you're going to want to have a very well insulated coop. The first year we had chickens, we had a coop with very thin walls, and it didn't stay as warm in the winter. So the next year Dad built this coop, which has a lot more insulation, and so stays a lot warmer. Actually, the building in this area is the coop. This building, like outside, this is the chicken run, and so this is where they spend most of their time. So you need to have like the physical structure of the coop and the run built in place. If you're gonna raise them from chicks, you have a little bit of time, because they stay inside when you first get them as chicks. They're not big enough to be outside yet. So, like, for example, when we got these 3 young ones, they were really small, and we kept them in a bin with, like, a heat lamp, food and water, and, like, some stuff on the ground. You need to like get the things for putting the food and water in. Again, if you live in some place really cold like Minnesota, you're gonna need a heater under the water that you can put under the water so it doesn't freeze. You are going to need to get a large amount of food for them, and it comes in like these really big sacks. So we actually keep it in like an old-fashioned style trash can in our garage. Here. But I should probably get back close to it. You can see there's also wood chips on the ground of their enclosure. You need to have some sort of like covering on the ground. And you need to remember to collect eggs every day, otherwise you'll get a ton of eggs. And like there's no way to tell how old they are just by looking at them. Usually when we collect eggs, we'll write the date we collected them on the egg in pencil. And then we know to use the oldest ones first, so we don't end up with like 3-month-old eggs. And in the winter, like January, as soon as the days start getting longer again, that's when they start laying. So you're going to need to go out every morning in the winter and collect the eggs so they don't freeze. And yeah, just generally you need to have a lot of structure built up. You need to make sure that you have the food and the water set up for them. And you do need to clean out the poop fairly frequently. Dad usually does that. I did that most recently, but that's usually, yeah. Another additional legal thing, you can't have a rooster, so you can't have a male chicken. That's because they just make too much noise in the city. And like we have neighbors over here, we have neighbors over here, we have neighbors over here. So it wouldn't be good to have a rooster crowing very loudly really early every morning. In addition, there are some limits as to like the amount of chickens you can have. You need to make sure that like your coop is physically big enough. This coop can house 6 chickens, so we are at our maximum number of chickens. I think there are some legal limitations as to the amount of chickens you can have. I don't know those off the top of my head. You also need to ask all of the neighbors in like a certain radius just to make sure they're okay with it. We asked like our next door neighbors, and I think maybe the people living directly behind us too. But there are a few of those legal limitations, and it's probably best to look those up. If you don't have a backyard, like if you live in an apartment, you probably can't get backyard chickens just because of the space and infrastructure that you need to set up. They're like out in the backyard, so especially during the winter, you don't spend a lot of time with them. They're usually more social if you handle them more as a chick, which is why Shadowfax and May, 2 of our chickens that we got closer to adulthood, are nowhere near as social as the ones we raised ourselves from chicks, because they weren't handled as much when they were really little. Chickens in general, though, they're really skittish. They're not going to be like a dog or a cat. They're not going to come up to you. Probably not going to like remember your face, even if you're the one that feeds them on a regular basis. So they're sweet in their own way, but it's not like most other pets where you like really build a like strong relationship with them. I mean, also they're out in the backyard, so like in the dead of winter you don't really get to spend much time with them anyway. Now Dan is going to read us a wonderful story about a woman who had chickens in her backyard and her sharing her chickens and the baby chicks that she's raising with her wonderful neighbors.
Today's story is Amelia Ellicott's Garden by Liliana Stafford and Stephen Michael King. A long time ago, Amelia Ellicott's family owned most of Sampson Street. from the candy store on one corner to the traffic circle on the main road. Now Amelia Ellicott and her cat Mustafa live at number 56, next door to a 3-story apartment complex with a high fence in between. Every day, Amelia Ellicott works in her garden as if the apartments and the people who live in them don't exist. Oh, this used to be such a nice neighborhood, she says to Mustafa. Amelia Ellicott's garden is getting out of hand. The roses near the road are almost too big for her to prune, and her once beautiful lawn is full of weeds. But she is proud of her home. She is immensely proud of her chickens. Amelia Ellicott's chickens aren't just ordinary chickens. They are prize Pekin bantams, the color of sunshine and marigolds. Every morning, Amelia Ellicott feeds them corn. And every evening, she visits them and stays for a chat. In the spring, she had waited anxiously for new chicks to hatch. And when the first tiny fluffball chicks poked out from under the wings of the brooding hens, she wished, just for a second, that there was someone to show them to. Oh, but there is no one, for Amelia Ellicott's family died a long time ago, and Mustafa refuses to be interested in chickens. But Tony Timponi is interested. Every evening before supper, he sits on the balcony of his 3rd-story apartment and watches the chicken scratching in their yard. Back home in Italy, Tony and his wife Donna kept chickens and goats and grew fruit trees and vegetables. Now they live in an apartment. Life is hard, says Tony Timponi as he watches Amelia Ellicott's chickens. Life is terribly hard. Adrian Popa agrees. He looks down into Amelia Ellicott's garden and wishes he could have just the tiniest corner to grow cabbage and zucchini. His neighbor, Lynn Lee, sipping an early morning cup of cocoa, dreams of ducks padding about on Amelia Ellicott's fish pond. The Martinovich children, trying to see over the fence, imagine a tire swing in the big mulberry tree. And Nikolay Butau, hurrying to catch the bus, stops for a moment to smell the roses. But no one ever said a word. They are too shy. And besides, Amelia Ellicott never even gives them the time of day. One gray and wintry afternoon, a terrible storm, and the wind whips around Sampson Street like a tornado. Amelia Ellicott watches in horror as her garden flies past her. The red and white umbrella she bought for the patio, a pink rosebush, several potted plants, a garbage can, and the chicken house roof. No, not the chicken house, yells Amelia Ellicott. She runs outside just in time to see the wind fling the sheets of corrugated iron against the fence. Then it lifts them up and dumps them in the parking lot of the apartment complex. Next come the chickens. And finally, Amelia Ellicott herself with her skirt up over the top of her head. And in the pouring rain, all the neighbors run around chasing chickens or trying to catch bits of Amelia Ellicott's garden. Amelia Ellicott straightens out her skirt. Oh dear, she says. What a mess. Not to worry, says Donna Timponi. You come in and sit down. I'll make you a nice cup of tea. While they drink tea in Donna Timponi's little kitchen, Tony Timponi and his neighbors catch all the chickens, even the rooster, who is high up in the mulberry tree. Then they carry all the sheets of corrugated iron into Amelia Ellicott's garden and nail them back on the chicken house roof. Oh, Amelia Ellicott is so grateful. She turns beet red. Thank you, she says as politely as she can. Thank you so much. We'll come tomorrow and help clean up, says Adrian Popa. No fence for a while, eh? Amelia manages a smile. No, she agrees, no fence. You could grow cabbages in that patch, says Adrian thoughtfully. I like cabbage, says Amelia, and zucchini. We used to grow zucchini over there. Do you think? And the next day, look at all the neighbors together. The following spring, Amelia Ellicott's chickens hatch 12 tiny fluffball chicks. And Amelia shows them off to everyone. And that is the end of the story of Amelia Ellicott's garden.
Oh, Sylvia, thank you so much for that. That took a lot of courage. That was like the chick coming out of the egg to do that. And you did it with passion and grace and just did a wonderful job. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And often as I look around our garden, I kind of wish we had chickens because they would probably eat the Japanese beetles and pick off some of the other bugs that are problems. As it is, we count on our native birds around here to do that for us. And at this point, it is time to leave our garden, and we will extinguish our flame. And as we extinguish the flame, we know that the light of truth and the warmth of love go with us in our heart. Have a wonderful week. Bye, friends.